am finally back with a plans and a murder. It's been so long and I understand, but I just got really busy and we're finally doing really good with our times, and so I finally feel like I have some time to myself. So today we are going to be talking about Jodi Arias. I'm pretty sure you already know about this whole story, but I just find her to be so fascinating just by how crazy this woman was. So, Travis Alexander was born on July 28th, 1977, and from the research that I found, he had a pretty rough childhood. Both of his parents were drug addicts to heroin, and his dad actually ended up passing away at the age of 11. I believe that it's from an overdose, but I'm not 100% sure. And he was one of 8 children, you guys. And after his dad ended up passing away, all of the brothers and sisters, including himself, ended up moving in with the grandmother. The grandmother was the one that actually introduced him to the Mormon faith, and he actually really liked it, and he ended up liking it so much that he ended up moving to Mesa, Arizona, simply because there was more of a Mormon faith community there, which I had no clue about. And while he was in Mesa, that's when he gained a lot of his success in the company that he was working for, and also with his motivational speeches. He actually had his own blog, which we'll get into a little bit later, but yeah, he basically had 3 sources of income. He had his sales, he had his speeches, and then he had his blog. So he was doing pretty well for himself. So well that he actually ended up buying a very large house in Arizona, and he ended up just letting 2 of his friends rent out 2 of his bedrooms just because he didn't want to be by himself, I'm sure. And these are probably the worst roommates in my opinion, but we'll get into this a little bit later. So with Jodi, I couldn't find a lot about her other than when she was in middle school, she was trying to grow marijuana from a Tupperware in her bedroom. And her parents somehow came across it, and instead of disciplining her themselves, they ended up turning her over to the police. And in her diary, she had wrote that she felt like her because they basically raided her whole entire room, and she felt like her parents had disrespected her space and that she couldn't trust them anymore. But there's a time and a place, Jodi, and this is not one. You're in middle school trying to grow weed in your bedroom. But her parents did mention that they thought that she was bipolar, because one second she would just be normal and then another second she would go on to like a full rage. But she never got diagnosed for it, nor did she ever get treatment for it. She actually ended up finding a love for photography when she ended up moving in with her grandmother, and later on she moved to Palm Desert, California with the boyfriend that she was only with for a couple of weeks, I believe. And this is when she ended up getting a job as a saleswoman at Legal Shield, which is also the same company that Travis works for. With the company, they actually would send them off to random trips, and they would be really nice trips too. And this one was to Las Vegas, fully paid for. Who would say no to that? I wouldn't. Girl, I'm going. And this is where Travis and Jodi end up meeting. So they ended up meeting in September 2006 at the conference, and there was a group of people and they were waiting for for them to all eat at Rainforest Cafe. I don't know why I found that so funny. I can't imagine like a full-on set of like salespeople waiting to go into Rainforest Cafe, but that's just me. And Travis and Jodi ended up meeting there, where Travis was introducing himself to everybody, and everybody in the group said that when Travis introduced himself to Jodi, it was like an instant connection between the two, and they were like inseparable from that point. They actually spent the night together, which we don't know if they actually slept together, but from what Travis had said is that they were talking up until like 7 in the morning, and that he had told his friends, like, she's the one, she's the girl that I'm going to end up marrying, but the only issue is that she was not a Mormon. And so from there on out, he actually made it a mission of his to turn her into a Mormon, and he would introduce her to like the books of Mormon, and he would take her to church with him and things like that. And Jodi was already pretty interested in it because the company that they work for is kind of centered around Mormonism. I believe that's how you say it. If I did, I'm sorry. And so Jodi was kind of interested already. Travis actually ended up baptizing her into the Mormon faith pretty, like, I think probably like 2 or 3 weeks after being introduced to it from Travis. So in February of 2007, they actually made their relationship official, and they were still living in 2 separate states. So they actually ended up purchasing a book called 1,000 Places to Visit Before You Die, and they actually visited a bunch of cities and states in between the times that they would, not in between, but together while they would want to see each other, which I find that to be kind of fun. And this is where Jodi actually ended up growing even more of a love for photography, because she would take a lot of pictures and stuff together. But from the time that they were together, Jodi and Travis ended up exchanging 82,000 emails, and they would actually sext each other often. So Jodi and Travis were going against the Mormon faith of, kind of being a little nasty, and she would actually bring the camera into the bedroom, which, do your own thing, girl, okay. And Travis would actually say to his friends that he understands that what he's doing is going against his faith, but it was kind of like he was just really addicted to her, and there was really no way of saying no to her. But Travis's friends did not like Jodi, and when they were trying to have this pep talk to Travis about it, they were behind a closed door, and they were kind of like, she follows you everywhere. If you go to the bathroom, she's like right outside waiting for you, and it's just kind of strange, like it's not normal. And they were like, I bet you that if you open that door, Jodi's gonna be right there. And so he opens the door, and lo and behold, she's right there, just waiting for him to come out and probably eavesdropping into the whole conversation. So his friends actually went up to Jodi and were like, we don't like you. We don't want you to be with Travis. And, like, we don't think that y'all's relationship is healthy. And she was like, I don't care what you say. I only care what Travis says. After Travis realizes this, he ends up breaking up with Jodi, and Jodi was like, no, you're not breaking up with me. It's not real. No. And it just goes back and forth from this point on of them breaking up and getting back together. And there was something that happened that nobody knows about, because obviously, like, neither one of them are going to talk about it, that he was just done with her. Like, he wanted nothing to do with her. And it was kind of a stopping point of their relationship for a couple of weeks, until Jodi ended up finding out that he was dating another woman. So Jodi ended up making up this story that she had a stalker, and that she needed a place to be at because she didn't feel safe anymore. And his friends were like, no, she's making this up. It's not real. And so he ends up listening to his friends, thankfully, and he's kind of, because she wanted to move in with him. And he put his foot down, and he told her no, thankfully to the defense of his friends. But Jodi couldn't afford the house that she was living in California anymore, and she actually sold that house and ended up moving to Arizona 10 minutes from his house, you guys, without telling him, by the way. And so one day she was like, okay, I'm finally moved in. I'm going to go to his house and I'm going to surprise him and let him know that I live 10 minutes from his house. So she goes over at night and she knocks on the door, and she is pissed when she finds a woman in his house that he's on a date on. This is when shit just goes downhill real fast, you guys. This is when all the creepy stuff starts happening with Jodi, where she became really possessive over him, and she would, because she knew obviously the lock codes, because she would go in and out of his house all the time, so she would doop, 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 she would put herself into his house, and when he ended up changing the lock codes, she would get into the house through the doggy door. You guys, I can't. And this is where I guess she just wasn't peaceful enough at her own place that was just 10 minutes away. She would get butt ass naked and she would sleep on his couch while nobody knew that she was there. You guys, that's just wild to me. And so Travis would sometimes kick her out like ASAP, like right then and there, being like, that's disrespectful. Stop coming into my house without anybody knowing. And then other times he would be kind of like, I guess I could get laid. Like, make up your mind, Travis. Come on. So during one of their pillow talks, Jodi was telling Travis that she was having a really hard time finding a job. And he was like, okay, well, I'll give you a job. So he ends up giving her a sexy maid outfit and was like, you can clean my house wearing this. What? The disrespect. I'm sorry. Lisa was actually the next girl that was really interested in him. So Jodi was like, she was pissed, you guys. So on a date, Jodi was creeping through the windows at Travis's house, and they started to hear some noises, and so Travis goes outside to go and see what was going on, and then pops out Jodi from the bushes, and he's kind of like, you need to get the hell out of here. Like, this is not cool anymore. Like, I've been helping you out. I understand we've been doing some things, but you gotta leave. So she ends up leaving, but the next morning, Lisa ends up getting an anonymous email about how she was a nasty skank and how she was a little whore. So basically she was harassing her through an email, and Lisa just wasn't having it. And also, Travis's tires would get slashed like all the time. All the time. So somehow he ends up convincing Jodi to move back to California with her grandparents, and this is where she meets a guy named Ryan, and Travis ended up moving on with a girl named Mimi, because obviously like Lisa's traumatized from Jodi, you know, makes sense. So Jodi ended up finding out about the girl named Mimi and started calling him again, and the reason she was finding these things out is because she would hack into his MySpace, his emails, his bank accounts, like everything. How she was doing it, he must have had like the most common password there could be. And they ended up getting into a massive fight again, and he tells her to never speak to him again. So this is when all the suspicious stuff starts happening. So on May 28th of 2008, Jodi's grandparents' house actually got broken into, but the only thing that was stolen from their house, and everything was pretty nice and clean, by the way, the only thing that house was missing was a .28 caliber gun. Only thing. And Jodi was like, that's kind of weird. I wonder why they would only steal a gun, you know? It's kind of strange. But on June 2nd of 2008, she ends up saying that she wants to go visit her boyfriend over in Utah, and she's going to go and rent a car. So she goes to rent a car, and she automatically notes that there looks like there's a Kool-Aid stain on the car. And when they tried to give her the car, by the way, They gave her a red car at first, and she was like, no, I don't want a red car because that draws way too much attention, which, I kind of get. So they end up giving her a white car, and she was like, bet, I'll take that one. That's the one I want. So she ends up turning off her phone, and when she arrived on June 5th, in between, she ended up calling and texting Travis, and even left him voicemails rambling about the plans that they had the night that he died. Travis was off living his life. He was about to go to Mexico, by the way, and he was taking Mimi. But Mimi found it kind of strange that she wasn't hearing from Travis, and also he ended up missing a meeting, which he's not like that at all whatsoever. And so people started to find it a little bit strange, and so Mimi and his friends end up going to Travis's house, and nobody answers. So they go in through the garage because they know the gate code, and Travis's roommate came out, and he was listening to music like hella loud, so he didn't end up listening to anything. But Travis's friends are asking the roommate, like, have you seen Travis? And he was like, no, he's in Mexico. And Mimi's like, no, we're supposed to be in Mexico tomorrow, and he hasn't been answering his phone, and he's been working. He hasn't been working. So they go into his room, and that's when his roommates get like a huge whiff of like something stinky. And so that's when they start to realize, like, oh crap, something went down. So Mimi automatically was like, I'm not going in there. Y'all can go, but I'm just going to go ahead and call the police. So that's what she ended up doing. And his friends actually kept going into the bedroom, and there was blood everywhere, all over the walls, all over the floor. And when they went into the bathroom, that's where the most like gruesome scene was. And also that's where Travis was. And he was actually in a fetal position in the bathroom, and his body was already decaying from being there for so long. I believe it took about 4 days for his friends to actually find him in their own home, which kind of blows my mind. And that's why I'm kind of like, those are some crappy ass roommates, because I'm kind of like, how do you not smell that? And two, how are you just like not gonna talk to your friend? Like for me, like when I leave somebody somewhere, I always tell my friends, okay, this is the airline that I'm going on, this is where I'm going, and this is the time that I'm leaving. Like just in case, like something happens to me and like a plane crashes or something, they at least know she's on that plane, she's dead. At least. Something. But no, his friends were kind of like, it's fine, he's fine, whatever. And I don't know if that's just how dudes function, but I have way too much anxiety for that. So the police arrive, and they are asking the friends, like, who could have done this? And automatically, all of them, I can imagine everybody in sync being like, Jodi. Jodi did it. We know she did it. She's crazy. And we know she did this to Travis. And they were kind of like, all right. So they write down Jodi. So as they're going into the crime scene, they automatically know that it is a crime of full-on passion. Like, whoever did this was super close to him, and they felt some type of way about him, and there was just blood everywhere. And it seems like he fought really, really hard, but she ended up stabbing him 27 times and cut his throat from ear to ear, basically, and he was almost decapitated, and then shot him in the head. That's gruesome, y'all. I can't believe when I heard all of that. That was just wild. But there was blood on the walls, and there was actually a bloody handprint on the wall, and they were trying to figure out who this was because there was a full-on print. And also, they noticed that there was some blood on the washer, and they were like, that's kind of strange. So they opened up the washer machine, and there's some bed sheets, but also, you guys, there's a camera. A full-on camera. They don't know if Jodi just forgot about the camera or she was trying to damage the camera to where nobody could get to the camera. But I think she forgot about the camera, and she ended up leaving so that she can go on to her another date that she was going to have with Ryan. You remember Ryan? Yep. That guy's still there, still waiting for Jodi. From the time that Jodi was not arrested and Travis was deceased, the friends obviously had to plan a funeral. And so Jodi ended up finding out about the funeral somehow, and she shows up at the funeral. The audacity of this woman, y'all. She murdered him, and she was like, I'm here to pay my condolences to Travis. We were so close. Oh, hell no. I think if I was one of Travis's friends, like, shit would have gone down real quick. After a couple of days, the police officers were able to retrieve some photos from the SD card that was almost practically damaged. And the first photo that they pull up is a photo of Jodi full on butt-ass naked. Y'all. And the thing is that these photos, when they retrieved them, they also had timestamps on them. So when they were getting all these photos, they were getting super excited because they were finally getting that big break in this case. But they didn't just stop there, you guys. They kept going into the photos, and there was these photos of Jodi and of Travis, and there was this one chilling photo of Travis when he's in the shower and he's looking dead straight into the camera, and they think that that is the last photo of Travis alive, and they think that she actually put him in the shower, or she convinced him to go into the shower, and she was acting like she was doing like a little photo shoot of him, and that's when she went into her full rampage. So they think that she stabbed him in the chest, and he was able to get out of the shower, and the way that it looks like with the splatter on the mirror, he was looking at himself and he coughed really hard, and there was a blood splatter from that, and she just fully attacked him from that point. But the wild thing is that while all of that was happening, the camera glitched. So when the camera glitched, and probably he ended up like hitting her to get that camera out, or to obviously like self-defense, that camera ended up glitching, and as it was falling, it kept taking pictures. And the last photo that there was a photo of Travis on the floor with a foot next to him, with like kind of like more of like the blood near, but the photos were so unclear that they couldn't fully see everything that was happening. It's not like the photos were like an obvious photo of like her stabbing him, but there are pretty obvious photos that something happened in between that time, from the time that that last photo of him in the shower happened and the time that he was on the floor. So what the officers thought was that she put him into the shower. She made her first attack there. That was a stab into his chest. She stabbed him a couple more times. She ended up slitting his throat from ear to ear. She shot him in the head. She ended up putting him back into the shower to wash off his body. She went and washed off herself, and then she ended up putting the bed sheets into the washer so that no DNA of her being there, that she had sexual affairs with him, was there. And they think that she probably accidentally left the camera, like she didn't mean to put the camera in there, but she either tried to do that so that she could possibly damage the camera so much that it would be hard to retrieve anything, but it would be kind of dumb for her to do that without taking the SD card, if you know what I mean. And so they think that she actually ended up forgetting that, and she ended up leaving. Like, she just went on her way, and she ended up meeting Ryan the next day. And when they're gathering all this evidence, they end up finally having enough evidence to go ahead and arrest her. So they go and get the arrest warrant for her at her grandparents' house, and she is there sporting some new brown fresh hair with a rental car stuffed with condoms, a gun, and a few other things that would make it look like she was about to run. So they take her to the station, and they're doing an interrogation, and they're asking her, can you confess that you murdered Travis? And she was like, I didn't do anything to Travis. So she's denying the whole entire thing. So they bust out these photos of her where she's full on naked, and they were like, is this you? And she was like, I mean, it looks like me. So she's like trying to deny that it's her. And they're kind of like, well, we have this evidence against you that the handprint that was on the wall, it's not your handprint in particularly, but your DNA is mixed in there. And she's like, well, I mean, I've been at the house many times, so I'm pretty sure my DNA is everywhere. So she's like making up any excuse that she can to get out of this whole situation. But what she doesn't know is that they have all the photos, and they also found out that it is the same. You remember the gun that her grandparents, just were missing from the burglary? It was the same caliber. It was the same caliber gun that went missing from her grandparents' house, so they made that connection as well. So the officer tells Jodi, like, okay, I have enough evidence that I'm going to go ahead and arrest you. And Jodi's first comment was, is it okay if I clean up and put on some makeup before I take my booking photo? What? After this, they actually end up leaving Jodi in the interrogation room by herself for a couple of hours. I don't know what was going on. Maybe it was a booking process or whatever, but this is where the iconic situation where she's doing her handstand and she's singing "Oh Holy Night." Like, there's Christmas around the corner in July, but everybody was kind of like, this is so strange. But her defense was, she was like, I was in there by myself for many hours by myself. I mean, you get bored after some time, but people were just so infatuated with how she was doing such strange things in a very serious situation. So the next day she goes to the officers and she's like, all right, I'll confess. So they're like, all right, cool. Like, she's about to confess to this murder that she committed. But she makes up this huge story about how there was somebody had broken. There was a male and a female, and they were dressed up like ninjas, and they were going after Travis to murder him. And obviously, like, they did that very well, but they ended up finding her purse, and they went through her purse, so they knew who she was, where she lived, where her grandparents lived, and things like that. So they said, if you tell anyone, we will find you. So she was like, obviously, I'm not going to say anything. Like, obviously, now that I'm here, like, I have to say something because I didn't do it. But these ninjas did it. So the officers are like, oh, hell no. So after this, the nation knows about this case. The world knows about this case, and everybody was obsessed with it. Obviously, like, we're still talking about it 20-something years later. Almost, I think. And I'm really bad at math. I think that was 20 years ago, but let's move on. The world was just infatuated with this case. There was a really nice looking couple. She was really hot. There's no way that she could do this. Like, people were just obsessed with this case. And so she shows up to court with these little frumpy little bangs, with this brown hair, with glasses, and they make her look extremely innocent. Kind of like, like an innocent teenager that just loves reading books type of thing. That's what they made her look like. So during the court trial, they put together the story of how this crime was possibly committed. So what they think happened is that Jodi was taking the trip supposedly to Utah, but she ends up taking a few gas cans with her, so she didn't have to stop at gas stations. So there was no trail of her from going from California to Arizona instead of California to Utah, where there would be no camera shots of her, there would be no stops of her going to gas stations or anything like that. She turns off her phone, so there was no tracking of her going to Travis's house. Travis ends up letting her in after she conveniently shows up, and he's like hot and heavy, They take a cute couple of poses and photos of them nude, and then the final shot of him staring into the camera. When this happens, that's when she ends up stabbing him in the chest. He comes out of the shower and he leans over the sink, and that's when he coughs really hard based off of the splatter, like I said. Then she stabs him in the back while he's coughing. Travis, still alive, trying to fight off Jodi. He goes into the hallway, and that's where they find that handprint, probably from trying to balance himself, and he ends up falling forward. She turns him over and she slits his throat. She ends up dragging his body back into the bathroom, shoots him on the floor, drags his body into the shower, washes off the body, sticks the sheets into the washer, and she accidentally put the camera in there. She grabs her keys and she goes to Utah and turns her phone back on. When she turns her phone back on, she ends up texting and emailing Travis about future plans of meeting soon. So she made up, they ended up making this whole detailed oriented thing. So when they put her on the stand, they ask her one more time, did you kill Travis? And she's like, yes, I did it. I killed Travis, but it was in self-defense. So everyone's kind of confused as to what she's talking about. And she was like, I killed him because he was abusing me, and I just had this rage inside of me of all the times that he abused me, and he is not a good Mormon man like everybody thinks he is. So she turns over emails and recorded phone calls and saying that no one knew the real him but her. So she ended up saying that he was like a little too freaky and he would get really, really rough with her, and they ended up using a phone call from him of saying that she wants to tie her up to a tree, which, I mean, no judgment on how people do their thing, but like, you know, it's kind of strange. So, she says that the day of the murder, she ended up catching Travis pleasuring himself to a photo, and when she went to go look at the photo, it was actually a photo of a little boy. So she got kind of like frustrated by this, and she got pissed. So this is when she went to the shower. She got mad, or he got mad that she was taking photos of him, and she went into self-defense mode, and she found conveniently a knife near her and ended up stabbing him. Then she remembered that he had a gun in his closet and ended up shooting him there. So, yeah. At the end of the day, she tried to make it seem like he was a pedophile and he was an abuser, which I find to be like a really low of a low type of situation, because that man can't even defend himself anymore. So after this, obviously, they find her guilty, and the following day, they have to sentence her as to how long she's going to be in jail for. So during this time, they can't figure it out. They don't know if they should give her life in prison or if they should give her the death penalty. And because of this, it goes into a mistrial. You guys. But it was supposedly a pretty easy mistrial since she was already convicted of the murder, but they were just trying to figure out how they were going to do it. Like, do they kill her or do they just store her in jail forever and let her rot in there, you know? So they have to do the whole trial all over again just so a new jury can hear everything and all the evidence. And then it goes into a second mistrial. So because of the two mistrials she had, the judge had to finally sentence her. So she ended up convicting her of first-degree murder on May 8th, 2013, and then sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And the thing is that I think she was having such a hard time getting her sentencing because when she came into the court, she came in with a shirt that said survivor on it in purple, which is like the domestic abuse colors, and she was like, I'm just here because I am a survivor of domestic abuse, and I will be selling these shirts, like if she wasn't going to be going to jail or anything like that. And so I think because of that, that was stuck in the back of the mind of the jurors, and that's why they were having such a hard time trying to convict her, or trying to give her a sentencing, I mean. She did try to reappeal on March 24th of 2020, but the court denied, obviously, because they're not going to give her that. To this day, she still denies everything, and she's had to move to different prisons because there's so many fans that are obsessed with her, and this includes men. Like, come on, man. Like, you can find somebody better than that. Like, leave her alone. Like, she needs to live with what she did, and I think, you know those people that when they lie so much, they kind of start believing their own lies type of thing. I think that's what ended up happening with Jodi, and I think she doesn't really know, like, she hasn't fully grasped, like, everything that she's done, nor I don't think that she fully knows everything that she did either. But I just feel so bad for Travis. Like, Travis was really trying hard to, like, you know, do something good and, like, turn her into a Mormon, but, like, uh, God. I'm not saying, like, having sex before marriage is, like, awful, but I just, I don't understand how, like, it went from just having sex before marriage to, like, this whole situation. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like this is a really similar story to the Dear Zachary case that I did last, because it pretty much matches print for print of, like, not stopping for gas and, like, turning off your phone and, like, making yourself real cozy at their house type of thing. If you haven't listened to that one, go listen to that one, because that one's really interesting, and I haven't heard a lot of people know about that case. But yeah, let me know what you think down below about this case. And if you have any other cases that you want me to do, let me know too, because I'm kind of out of it. I don't really know what else to talk about. I think I want to talk about Chris Watts next. I am really interested in that case too, because the fact that he wanted to get rid of his whole entire family so he can be off with another woman. And I have my own opinion about that woman, but, you know, like, to each their own, to each their own. But Jodi Arias, she is one crazy little bitch, if you ask me. But yeah, that is everything, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm really excited to be back, and hopefully I can do these more often because we're doing really good, and I'm really appreciative of you guys. And yeah, all the information of all the stickers that I use, mainly they're all mine, but if I use any others, I will leave them down below. But yeah, I hope you guys liked it. Thank you. Bye. Also, I want to make a side note that I understand that my point of view is, like, super far away. Totally forgot that we, like, zoomed in. So yeah, I bought some extra stuff so that I can actually zoom in and get a clearer shot. But yeah, I'm really sorry, but I hope that you enjoyed the content and the voiceover. But yeah, okay, now I'm really going. Bye, guys.